Continuing our work on building out the more complex pages of our site, we now come to the home page where we have one of the more intricate layouts overall, and we still have to work on our masthead, which will have a few little tricks as well, but let's round out this home page first. So in this page, you may recall from our mockup, we have two sides. We have the group on the left that is the recent news, and the group on the right that is featured products. Okay, so if you think about it, we have the main tag wrapping around these that could give us a context for Flexbox, and then we'll have a tile on the left and a tile on the right that gives this overall layout. And then of course we'll drill in and get a little bit more intricate in these other spaces here. Okay, so let's set that up. First of all, we need to make sure that we have containers around those two sides because we have the main tag around the overall part here. Let's go ahead and put a class on here of page home, as we've done on many of our other areas. But let's drill in here and add a class of, let's see, what is it? Recent articles. And then we'll close that after this button down here. And then let's put a div around this guy, and this was the featured products. Okay, and that needs to close down here. Okay, so we have now the wrappers that we need in order to create the overall layout. Let's give it a shot. So we have page home. It's going to get display flex, flex flow, row wrap. Okay. And then the items inside were the recent articles. I realize that this LI is a little bit out of place, isn't he? So let's move that up before we make ourselves too untidy here. HIJKL. There we go. Okay, so we were going to the recent articles. Okay, and this needs to get a width. I think it's 760 pixels. Let's go check. Yeah, you can see this image is just as wide as the whole space there. So 760 pixels there, and then probably 360 on the other side. So 760 there, and then the featured products. All right. So now you can see they're tiling up, but there's a little bit of overlap. It's because this image is being pushed over because there's this extra space. Remember, we set this. This is also typically going to be true on ULs by default, that there is some padding on the left side of ULs by default. So if you did not use the Meyer reset as I did, you might have that default padding to deal with. But in my case, I used the Meyer reset that zeroed that out. But then I went and said, hey, I do want a little bit of margin on the right, on the left, I should say, of ULs and OLs that you may recall I've been undoing in a lot of different places. So we actually have that on both sides. However, both of these also had classes that we used on the actual other pages. So let's go apply those classes and see what that might help, and in some cases might actually cause some new challenges. So one of them was article list. Okay, so we're going to put the article list class on here. Anytime we can be consistent with our classes is a good thing in my perspective. And in this case, it's a win because it did zero out that space and get rid of the list items. So that was a win for sure. Let's try the other side where we should have product list around specifically the UL there. Okay, and it was also a win over here in that that did also clear out that space. Now we brought over a few other things that may cause some challenges in some people's sites, in that this product list also has Flexbox set up on it. But because we're dealing with the narrower setting over here, it's probably going to work out to be okay in your site as it did on mine. Okay, now, once again, like what we've had in other places, we have an overall container that's 1200 pixels wide, and our 2 columns have taken up some of that space, but there's some extra space left over. Once again, it's an even gutter of 20 pixels on the side with a 40 pixel gutter in the middle. So again, I think the simplest solution is going to be to provide that that margin on the sides of the page home. So we're going to go to page home, and we're going to say margin left 20 pixels, margin right 20 pixels. Okay, so where in other places we use the shorthand, in this case I want to make sure we keep that 50 pixels above and 100 pixels below. So because we're dealing with the main tag here, I don't want to override that. So that's given us the little gap there. And then now if I go and set the justify content space between, now we just get that gutter in between that we like. Okay, good deal there. So we got our overall layout working, and now we just need to drill into the details on the 2 sides. Let's start with the product side, since it's looking pretty close to what we need. So first, let's figure out what we do have going on there. We have the items themselves, or the list of products, and each LI right now is actually not doing anything particular, and that's okay. What we do want to do, though, is match the classes that we're using on the main article page and see what, or on the main product page, and see what we can bring over. So for example, we want a 40 pixel gap below these, and I think we did the same thing over here. So we might have a win. Okay, I guess it's below here. Yep, cool. So we may have a win if we bring that over. So let's check out what classes we had on that page. So that would be the main product page, where each tile was a product, and it had a product link, product name, product image, etc. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about that. I bet we can actually copy and paste the top 3 items, since they should be exactly the same there as here, but we just need to fix the paths again. All right, so I copy those first 3 items, go back here, and we're going to carefully replace those items in here, but we just need to fix our path, because we're with the images, we don't need to point out anymore. We can just point right to images. But with the hyperlink wrapping around here, we can carefully select each of those. Oh, I missed the middle one. And go into products, and then to their respective pages there. Okay, let's see what that did for us. Okay, good in some ways, in that we did get the borders added and we've got Flexbox going, but these list items had that 20 pixel margin on both sides, and we don't need that margin here in this case. It's actually ending up squishing it lower, shorter, smaller than that 360 pixel space. That width is actually not winning out in the end. So let's go zero out that side margin for products that are inside of featured products. So we're going to our CSS, and we're saying inside of the featured product, when we have products, featured products, when we have a product, let's get a margin left of 0 and a margin right of 0. Oops. Okay. All right, so that's gotten our things back to the normal size, and our tiling is working just fine otherwise, so we're in really good shape there. Let's check out that bottom space here. So it looks like we have, on this very last item, we have that bottom margin of 40, and then we also have 20 below the list. So the total there is 60 between the last item here that has 40 and the bottom of the list that has 20. The total is 60, and I think that's more than we want. Our mockup actually has 50 there. That's right. Okay, so let's be a little bit more specific with what we're doing here. And I'd like to teach you how we can be as careful as possible with this. So here's what we might do. We might say that the last item in this container should not have any margin, and then we'll put all 50 pixels onto the bottom of product list. So let's start by putting it all on product list. Okay, so we're going to product list, and we're saying, you, Mr. Product List, you need to have margin bottom 50 pixels, if I could actually type. Okay, now the product list, we want the very last item on that list to have no margin. So product right now is getting 40 pixels on the bottom, but the one in this list, we want to remove it from that very last item. So we have a way to select specifically the last item in a list, or the last item inside of any container, using the last child selector. Okay, so this is saying the product that is the last child that's inside of product list is going to get margin bottom 0. Okay, last child product that's in product list. Actually, I want featured list. Featured, not featured list, featured products. Okay, so featured products, product that is the last child gets margin bottom of 0. Okay, so the result then is that we have margin bottom of 40 on the other two list items. You can see that that 40 is still there for those two. That's that orange highlight you're seeing. But then we're also ensuring that down here, this one gets 0, and then all 50 of the space that we want is on the UL as a whole. Now, as I'm highlighting, I'm noticing that I see that blue highlight, and my product tiles are sticking out of that just a little bit. I want to drill in and figure out why that is. Okay, so it's because we have a border on these while we're also telling them to be width 100%. So the result is that it's 100% of the container plus 2 pixels, 1 pixel for each of the borders left and right. So we can just pay a little bit more attention and fine tune that by going to our product images and telling them to be to use the box sizing border box setting. Remember that setting from our lessons? So product image, where we're providing that border, let's say box sizing border box. And this is going to come in handy for any of the places where we have that, in that it's going to make the images just a teensy bit smaller, and they're going to fit nicely inside of their containers now without overflowing. Okay, good deal. Okay, so I think the product side, oops, I guess we do need to adjust the spacing below this guy at the top of the product page. So let's do it on the top of the product list. Let's put some margin top on the top of product list that is inside of featured products to get the gap there that we want. Well, what is that gap? It is 20 pixels. Okay, so we said we're going to go to the top of product list that's inside of featured products. So inside of featured products, product list. Okay, it's a good way to start. Margin top 20 pixels. Okay, now we have the gap there that we want, and we can call this side done. All right, so let's deal with this side over here. Why don't we go and get that similar gap at the top on this side while we're dealing with the similar thing. So that would be the recent news. Realize my content there is different from my mockup, so let's just sync that up real fast. Recent news. Actually, you know what? I think articles is better. Articles is better. Recent articles. What did I have in my mockup? Yeah, I said recent news here. This should be recent articles. Okay, that's better. Okay, so this is recent articles, and recent articles. Make sure we have the selector there. Okay, so we're going to have recent articles, and inside of that there's going to be an article list that needs margin top 20 pixels. All right, we're going to have some more fun with this list because this special list of articles also needs to do some fun things. So let's look at the layout and think about that. So down here is where we have the challenge, right? Because we have these two items tiling up side by side. So we could imagine that we have a container around these that is doing the flexbox styling. But we could also realize that, we should realize that because these are list items, we can't group these two separate from this one. They're already grouped as a whole as one list, and we don't want to break that semantic structure. So thankfully, we can treat the whole list as a flexbox situation where the first item, the featured article, is width 100%, but the other two, in fact, otherwise articles inside here, are width, 360. Okay, so let's get that default style going first of all. So this would be, let's see, featured article, article list, recent articles. Okay, so this is going to be recent articles, article. So you may remember that from the other page, we actually need to sync up our styles here. So on the main article page, here you can see we had this kind of markup where we had the article list and inside we had an article and all these other classes. So I think once again I'm going to bring over these first three items. That's the first three items, and then we'll update the paths accordingly. So here go our first three items, 1, 2, and they should just replace all these, shouldn't they? Okay. So those are all in there now, and so if we go refresh, they should be trying to do the setup that we had on the other page where they're trying to tile up, and so we will kind of undo that a little by little. Instead, what we want here is for the articles inside of article list themselves to not be flexbox. Instead, we want the list as a whole to be flexbox. So we're going to go on to our styles, and we're going to say when we have an article inside of recent articles, it's going to be display block. Okay, so that should undo the flexbox styling that was being applied there. So see, recent articles article is overriding what we have here on that article. Okay, let's see, is that the way I want to do that? You know what, I think I want to flip it. I think I want to say that the articles that are on the inside of the page articles get these settings so that I don't have to do that. So yeah, we're going to flip it. We're going to go to the, I'm going to undo this, so I'm just going to pull that out for now. We'll come back to that. So up here where we had plain old articles, this guy here, we're going to modify so that these styles are only being applied inside of the page articles. So this guy right here, I don't think we ever put that page level class on the main tag, did we? So class equals page articles plural. Okay, so we got that class on there, and we modified this. This needs to move down. Page articles plural articles right there. Okay, so let's go make sure we didn't break anything over here. This is still looking the way that it should, refreshing just to be sure. But now on our home page, we should not be competing with so much of those other settings. So let's see how much cleaner this is now. Okay, so let's be specific with what we're doing here though. So this would be the recent articles article, is going to get a width of 360 pixels. And let's go ahead and do those margins, those magic margins, where we have 0 on the top, 20 pixels on the bottom, and we'll keep 0 on the, let's say that's 20 pixels on the sides and 0 on the bottom. Okay, so now you can see that's actually not the way I wanted to do that. So let me just undo that margin. Sorry about that. Let's just take it out. Okay, so we set the widths to 360. And it's just that the article intros are still getting that 760 width because we set them loosely enough to always have that 760 width. So let's go undo that, and not undo it, but make it more specific. So that would be the article intro. Okay, so actually the image link and the article intro, both of those have widths that we really want to confine to just the page articles plural. So we're going to change that. So you can see the article image link and the article intro, they both have specific widths that we really only want to apply on this page. So we've just put that more specific context around them. We'll just move them down here. So let's see, article, intro, those both should go down here. Articles, article, article image, article intro. Okay, good. So here we should no longer have those article intros trying to go the full size because they're not on that articles page anymore. And so they're not getting any of those settings. But over here on the articles page, we do have that more specific setting still applying because we put that page articles class here. And so the article intro inside of that page articles is getting the more limited width, or the more specific width. Okay, so I know this is starting to feel a little bit complex. You can see why we saved these layouts for a little bit later on. And it turns out that we're kind of circulating around between styles we had before and styles we have here. And that's just the complexity of things. That's just how it works with all of this. We have a lot of power, but with that power, we also have a lot of overlap, and it's just a little bit of a dance sometimes. Okay, so we have these all set to the same, to the 360 width, but really we want this first one to go full width. I know we'll have to make some content changes still to remove some content. That's okay. But let's get smart and put a specific class on that first one. So let's do featured. Let's do article featured. Oops, and the double dash is not a convention you're familiar with, so let's just stick with article featured. Okay, putting article first allows us to keep this organized with the articles, whereas if we did featured, it's going to end up being organized with the Fs. And it still makes sense to say article featured, I think, so that's good. All right, so putting this up here with the other articles, so we have article featured, and you're going to be width 100%. Okay, we don't really care. We want you to just fill your container. Okay, so it didn't win. Let's figure out why that didn't win. All right, because we had the recent article selector in front of it. Okay, so that's fine, that's fine. So you can see that, oh, maybe I didn't save it either. Let's go back and check on that. You know what, I did it on the wrong one. So carefully pulling this off of my articles page, closing that page so I don't make the same mistake again, sticking it up here on my actual home page. And now, did that make a difference? No, it didn't, but that's okay. We can explain why now. See how we have a recent articles article selector. So that has two classes, which is more specific than just one class. So the width of 360 is winning over the width of 100%. Okay, so if we want this one to win, we need to at least match the specificity, if not exceed it. Okay, so let's at least start by making that selector more specific to be also inside of the recent articles. So we're gonna just append recent articles on the front, and then we'll just move it down with the others, which will probably also feel a little bit better too, having it down there. Recent articles, article featured, should now win out. It's not only just as specific, but it's also lower down in the style sheet, so it should win. Okay, now, because I copied and pasted this whole thing over, I have the smaller image in place, so I need to replace that with my larger image. So the article, and we need to fix the paths as well. So technically they're working like this, but they should not have the magic escalator there. So we pull that out, and then we should also update all of our hyperlink paths. So 1, 2, 3 for every item. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. Need the articles folder in front of them. Okay, so our path should work again, and that's good. All right, then we need to just get that larger image in for the first one. So this should be the image cover in Vision Tips. Okay, so now it's the full width. And you can see that we have the full width at the top and the 2 items below. So now when we turn Flexbox on article list inside of recent articles, we're being that specific because we also have an article list over here on the main articles page that we don't want to do Flexbox. So we're going to go in and say inside of recent articles, the article list right here needs to be display flex. And we're going to do flex flow row wrap as before, and we'll go ahead and put justify content space between, which is going to have that nice gutter appear on the lower section. Okay, so you can see we have the overall effect going very well, and we'll circle back and hone this guy in a little bit more. Before we do, let's just get the spacing at the bottom here tightened up. You can see that we have some, what is that? Some default spacing on the bottom of LIs. Oh, it's that 5 pixel spacing. Yes. Do we have that on some of these other guys? Nah, because we had overridden them already. Okay, so our article here needs to get some specific settings. So what do we want? Oh, okay. Let's zero it out. So we're gonna say recent articles article gets margin bottom 0. Okay, what that means is that all of these now have 0 margin on the bottom. Okay, we will want some margin between the featured one and the other 2, but we'll put that specifically on the featured one. Circle back to that in a minute, but we do want to now make sure that we get the desired 50 pixel space, again from our mock-up. We have 50 pixels of space between the whatever is the bottom of the list and this button. So let's go put that on the article list inside of recent articles. So recent articles article list, margin bottom 50 pixels. Okay, now that's centered, or not centered, it needs to be centered, but it's pushed down. Let's deal with that centering a little bit later. So here we go. Let's finally work on this bit up at the top, where we're going to need to do a decent bit of surgery on the markup that we brought in here. So we want actually to bring this whole little block of text up on top, but first let's simplify what we're dealing with here. So we really want the name of the article, and we want the read more link, but we don't want anything in between. And if along the way we could actually simplify by wrapping a hyperlink around the whole thing, that might be kind of nice. So let's give it a whirl. We're going to go in here and say, actually, I see what we might need. Let's see if we can get away with having the single hyperlink around the whole bit, which means we cannot have that div needs to go away there. That div, okay, let's see, because we want the whole thing to be clickable like a hyperlink. So let's see. I do like the hyperlink wrapping around the whole thing. But let's see, this, we could keep this, we need to remove these two. Now, because we have a hyperlink out, I'm just closing this div that is currently around these two things. Because we have this hyperlink here, we have to be very careful that we don't ever have a hyperlink within a hyperlink. That creates sort of a an inception-like vacuum in the web. So we don't want to do that. But this is already kind of serving as a link, so I'm just going to take this out and do a span tag. A span is an inline tag that basically has it's a semantic free tag that makes it easy for us to kind of put whatever we want on it. And then this hyperlink here needs to go away as well. Okay, so we can put a class on here. Let's see, first of all, type spec wise, that hyperlink in our mockup is styled like an H3, a heading 3, which I believe in our mockups is an H4 tag. Yes, there it is. Okay, so this tricky guy here. Remember all these different things? Well, we're already kind of set up for it in that we've separated the color out, and in this case we do want a different color. So let's now see what we might do. We might call this a article feature read more. That's a little bit wordy, but you can get the idea. So we're going to say also for article feature read more. Should get all those different settings. Okay, so we refresh. All right, now you can see that we've got some color things to work out, but what we're left with is one hyperlink around the image and the div that has the H2 and the span inside of it. Okay, I think we can further improve this because in order to get these to overlap, we may simplify things for ourselves if we move this image out of the markup and put it on as actually a background image here. This is a great example of where an inline style can also be super helpful because this image may change out over time. If you imagine this list of articles changing over time as we get new articles, well, this is going to shift down to this next position and things like that. So rather than putting this image on as a background image and putting it actually in the style sheet, we're going to put it on as an inline style. But we'll put as much as we can still in the style sheet. So you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. Okay, so the result there is we're going to go and we're going to pull this image out of the markup. I'm going to copy the actual attribute there. And we're going to put it on as a background here. So to provide an inline style, we're going to enter the style tag and we're going to say background image, and then we're going to say URL, and we're going to put a single quoted string there and paste that in. Okay, so let's see what effect that had. Actually, because we did that, we can now kind of solve this why do we need that div question there. So we have the hyperlink wrapped around the whole thing. We should have a background image on the A tag, and then the H2 and the span inside of there. So let's see what that looks like now. Okay, it looks kind of funky, doesn't it? But you can see that that image is trying to appear there behind here. So let's get in and play around with it more, but first think about what we need here. Okay, so we do want that image to show up, and we'll figure out how to do that in just a minute, but it's going to amount to setting a A tag that's there right now is inline by default. So actually I'll just show you. If we say this article image link that's inside of article featured, so article featured, dot article image link display block, it'll already behave a little bit differently. Okay, so you can see we're starting to have the effect coming on there. where we now have, we see the image appearing behind here. But if we're not careful, this image will tile, meaning it will repeat in the background. So let's go ahead and say background repeat, no repeat. And we'll go ahead and also be careful about its positioning. Background, oops, position. We're going to say left top. Okay, so it's going to stick to the top left of the space there, and it's basically doing the same thing that it already was, which is fine. Okay, so now we want to basically push this text down inside of that box. By how much? Let's see, about 300 pixels. So let's put some top padding on this A tag that's going to have the effect of taking the content inside. So here's our A tag. Top padding is going to say that everything inside of that A tag is going to get pushed down while still seeing the background image behind. So that's just what we're after. So padding top 300 pixels. Okay. Cool. All right, so we're getting really close. Now we just need to get that background color to appear behind here. And there's a couple of tricks involved with that. First of all, I think we want to put that background color on these elements. And so one option would be to actually go ahead and group these two elements, which is unfortunate because we have a hyperlink around them and there's actually nothing else in here. And so it would really feel silly to go ahead and group those two elements. So I think instead, I'd like to try to fake it by putting the background image on both of those rather than grouping them. And let's see if we can pull that off. Okay, so the article title and the article featured read more that's inside of the article image, article featured, is going to get this very special background color. For all purposes right now, we're just going to grab that accent color and start with that. Okay. But let's also go ahead and kill that text decoration. We don't need that. Okay, so we killed the text decoration that we don't want. Okay, so now we're going to say, so if we put the background image on the link as a whole, the background color that is, and that accent, you can see we'll go, oh, that's not where we want it, because it fills the whole thing. Actually, it's behind the image. We can't actually see it. So that's not where we want it. We want it individually on each of those two things. So that was article featured, article title. I think I can paste it. Can I just paste it? Yes. Okay. Okay, you'll see now, oops, that that's going to go behind this text here, but not behind the other one. So let's put it on that as well. Article. You know what? I'm going to just simplify this to article read more instead of article featured read more, since we have this here. So article read more. Okay, so we've got the background color. Well, we should. What did I do wrong? Helps to spell it. Background color, article, read more. Okay, we also lost some of our type styling there, which what did I do? Oh, somehow we got the, oh, yeah, because I had it over here in this great big nested selector. Got to remember, when you change something, you got to keep everything else in sync. Article, read more. Okay, there we go. So you can see it's there. It's got the color, but there's some spacing stuff going on. The H2 has some margin below it, and the span is inline by default, so it's not doing what we want. So let's go ahead and zero out. Let's see, where is that spacing coming from? The article title is showing margin bottom. There it is. Margin bottom 10 pixels. So we're going to go and say that this featured article title gets margin bottom 0. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and make this guy display block and color white. What did I do? There we go. Okay, so now you see they both have that color, but we're faking it. They're just blending together because they both have that full color going. Okay, let's also make the white color on this guy. Okay, now they both have the white color. So all that remains is we need to get them tiling up side by side. And so we can turn on Flexbox on this link. Again, because we have the padding top, the Flexbox is just by default going to have them tiling up just fine. So display flex instead of display block. And then justify content space between. And let's go ahead and do flex flow row wrap. Okay, so because of the row wrap, they're wrapping and they're going down below here. That's okay, because we're going to now go in and control their sizes. And actually, I think in this case, we're going to have them need to make sure that they butt up against each other. So this one here is set in 20 pixels from the left, and he's 90 pixels away from the read more. And your setting may be actually different depending on how you're trying to get your title to wrap. So I'm going to just play with this a little bit more and ask myself, what if I come out to 20 pixels away there? So this guy is, I think 181 is a little bit arbitrary. He is 20 pixels. Okay, I see he's width 181. Okay, so he should be 20 pixels from the edge, 20 pixels from his buddy, and this guy should be 20 pixels away over here. Okay, that is good for me. All right, so the result then is that we need this guy to be 520 and this guy to be 180. So the article title is width 520 pixels, and this guy is 180 pixels. Okay, now they fit beside each other, but because we didn't account for that gap, the space between setting is having them space apart. So I'm actually think I want to take that out on this one. So goodbye. All right, but because of the stretch setting, we're getting this solid color filling, which is really quite nice. That is very helpful in this case to have that color filling the whole height there. But now we want to put a little bit of left padding and a little bit of right padding over here, and then we'll need a little bit in between. And I think I will do that just on the one. Now, if we do margin, we're going to actually end up with a gap there, so we need to do padding. I think I'll put the padding on the title just to keep it simple. So the featured article title is going to get padding 0, 20 pixels. So it's 0 on top and bottom, 20 on left and right. And then the read more is going to get padding only on the right, 20 pixels for now. Okay, you can see that that has filled out the space. Now we need to think about how we're going to get the desired effect in terms of the actually spacing above and below here. And you can see in this case that it's 20 above and below for this guy, but for this guy, it's a little different. So first of all, I want to make sure that my baselines are still aligned. All right, so he is 22 and 68. So this guy's easy, he's 20. This one is a little bit weird, 68 and 22. Okay, so we go in and we say the article title needs 20 on all sides. But this guy, I'm going to modify this to be 20 all around, or so padding all around. So it's going to be 68 pixels on the top, 20 on the right, 22 on the bottom, and 0 on the left. Okay, so top, right, bottom, left when we have 4 values there. All right, the result should be that we have the spacing above and around that we want. Our baselines should be aligning perfectly, and they are. Okay, good deal. So now all we need to do is talk about how to get the semi-transparent color going on here. So what we know about so far is using hex values, and hex values do not account for any kind of transparency. But we can achieve transparency from a color standpoint if we know what the RGB value for this color is. So if we go on here and we edit its settings, and we look instead of at the hex value at its actual RGB value, we can drop that down here and find out. And we see that it is 55, 171, 255. That's red, green, blue. And right now it's set at 100% opacity. Okay, so this is where we realize that with the RGB plus the alpha transparency, we can adjust that transparency to be down to match what we want there. So let's set this up first by changing from using hex to using RGBA like this. We're going to go into this guy, and the background color for both of these is going to be RGBA. So no pound sign at the beginning, RGBA in parentheses. And then inside those parentheses, we want 55, 177, and 255. So 55, 177, and 255. Notice that we put, oops, it's 171, isn't it? Notice that we put a comma between each one and a space. Okay, and then the last thing is going to be the alpha transparency. So if I escape out of here, undo, I didn't mean to do that. You can see that we set this to be 90% transparent. That's the same thing as going in here. We could break this thing apart, change this to 100. And we could go into this guy and say, hey, your RGB at 90%, and we've achieved the same idea there. Okay, I want to keep it married to the actual accent and switch this back, but it's the same overall effect. So for this value, we're going to go 0.9. That's the same thing as 90%, right? Okay, when we do that, you see we now magically get that wonderful see-through color there. Ahaha. All right, so last of all, we just need a little bit of a gutter below to create that row type feeling. So that's 30 pixels. So that will be 30 pixels of bottom margin on our article featured. Let's see if that does the trick. We may need to be more specific. Yeah, so you can see that this, we earlier said that all of the articles inside of recent articles get a margin bottom of 0. So we need to make this selector more specific. So let's grab that guy and say recent articles. Article featured, margin bottom 30 pixels. Okay, was it 30 or 40? 30. Cool. All right, so last little piece here is for both sides. I think we want, okay, so on this side we want this button to fill the full width, and on this side we want the button to be centered, but we actually want them both to be the same width. So let's say that buttons on home page need to be 360 wide. So this is going to be page home button. Page home, we'll find it eventually. Page home button, width 360 pixels, and then we'll center it with auto margins. And let's see if we pulled off what we're looking for. We did. Now, something else funky going on there, because we have the width plus the padding that we have here. Ooh, a little gotcha. So let's switch to the button styles overall. And let's make sure to set box sizing border box on this guy. All right, that ensures that when we set a width, that width contains the padding and any border settings that we have. Okay, things are looking good. Let's just consider the, ooh, it looks like we need to get the right type styles applied here on these guys. So these are not type heading 2s anymore. They should be type 3s. Okay. Oh, and I forgot. It's partially that we copied that markup over from our other page. So we need to actually update a few things there, don't we? So in this page, these should be H3s because they are subheadings of this H2. And so I don't think we need, okay, we do want it on that one, but we don't need this class anymore. Let's just test it on the one. That didn't quite do what I expected. So article title is an H3. Oh yeah, it is doing the right thing. It's just redundant now to have the class there. And these should be H3s. Okay, let's just hold it up beside our mockup and make sure. Go to 0, command 0 to 100%. Okay, yeah, that is looking right. Look at that. Isn't she a beaut? So we just need to adjust the spacing here. So we want 20 pixels below those images to push that text down a little bit more. So let's see, how would we do that? We could say below the, I guess it's the article intros. What if we put some top margin on the article intros? Ooh, article title too. That was an accident. Okay, yeah, so article intro gets some top margin, but not everywhere, only on the inside of page home or inside of recent articles. I like that. All right, so inside of recent articles, the article intro. Actually, you know what? Let's be simpler. I don't think we need that container here on this context at all. So let's pull that out. Then we can do it on top of the article title, and that'll be better. Yeah, I like that. Simpler markup is better for me. Okay, so we just pulled out that article intro that wrapped around. So inside of recent articles, the article title, actually, how about article image link gets some bottom margin? Let's do article image link. But there'll be a little gotcha there that we'll have to watch for. Watch it for the gotcha. So article image link inside of recent articles. Recent articles. Looks like we need to alphabetize a little bit better there. Recent articles, article image link. Article image link. Close curly brace. Margin bottom 10 pixels. And needs to have the actual colon there. Okay, so you'll see then that we get the desired space. Well, let's see what happened. So we should have article image link, margin bottom. Okay, these guys are not display block. So article image link is also going to be display block. Okay, now that goofed up here, and you'll see why in just a second. But first, let's prove that we got the spacing we wanted. That's good. Okay, so why did the top get messed up? Well, notice that when we put that display block on, that conflicts with display flex we were trying to do here, because the article featured article image link is display flex, but we also have this article recent articles article image link set to display block. So it's lower down in the sheet. Article featured. This one is lower down in the sheet than the article featured setting. So all that to say, we have a couple of options, and I think that the best one would be to put the featured article and so this is our one selector that's this long, and typically we try to avoid this. There are all kinds of other ways we could do this, but let's make this one display flex, and then we don't need that setting on article featured. Article featured, article image link. We don't need it up here, but we'll keep everything else there. Okay, so everything else we'll keep at this 2 levels of specificity, but just that display flex setting we'll keep at 3, and we've restored it. So you can see down here, the 3 setting is winning over this one, and everything else is there on article featured, article image link. Okay, so you see this was a little bit complicated, and we typically like to not make things too tough on you. But we chose a fun, interesting layout for the purpose of showing you some different techniques here, and I hope it stretched you. So all that remains is to do this nav, but I think we'll put that in the next video.